the bankers showing up at the Shanghai Metals Exchange, and now those vaults are being drained, in particular in silver, because you can't export gold. And these things are undeniable, but I just want people to understand kind of simplistically what's happening. So the Chinese vaults are being drained due to the large demand exceeding supply in West. And I think these bullion banks are trapped. I know Alistair McLeod kind of alluded to that in your interview with him that I watched last night, that these banks are trapped. And so the Shanghai Gold Exchange and the Shanghai Futures Exchange sees the physical price of silver go higher, and at as much as $3 and $4 higher than the West. And because of this arbitrage that's sucking all the metal over there, right? And these traders don't have loyalty to this country in terms of the long-term ramifications. They're making a ton of money. So as this demand keeps flowing there and the price goes higher, you got the brain dead bullion banks and the COMEX and the LBMA that continue to slam down the price harder.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into explosive insights from Andy Schectman about the bullion banks declaring war on your gold and silver. Did you know that Western vaults are being drained, with Shanghai's silver vaults at their lowest levels since 2020? This has created a massive 10-15% arbitrage as traders exploit the price difference, draining Western reserves to cash in on higher prices in China. With only about 300 million ounces of silver left on the open market, the bullion banks are in deep trouble. Their usual spot contracts are now turning into a desperate scramble for physical delivery, signaling a potential market crisis. If this continues, we could see a major shift in the silver market that impacts prices worldwide. Schectman warns that this situation is a ticking time bomb. The bullion banks' efforts to manipulate the market are backfiring, and the implications for silver availability and prices are huge.
I want everyone to watch this. You see that? You see that, Glenn Beck? Color Revolution? Color Revolution, the underground anti-Trump cabal. I watched it last night. It'll blow your darn mind. It'll blow your mind about who intervenes in other countries' affairs. It's not China. We have a long history of doing that. And I don't know why I always feel like I need to say this, but I am a patriot, and I thank God every day for living in this country and the opportunities it afforded me. But to go around and point fingers at a country like China when the United States has 750 U.S. military bases in 80 countries. And when we talk about, meddling in other countries' affairs, we should have listened to Thomas Jefferson and not done that. We should have a secure border, bring all of our troops home, and help. And instead of meddling in others' affairs, if you want to put them to work, have them help build our infrastructure, which is crumbling and decaying, and all the money that costs. That supply chain, the supply chain of keeping all of these 750 military bases in 80 countries supplied, it's extraordinarily expensive. And yeah, so, this is a very anti-Chinese slant. And as far as I'm concerned, if I had my druthers, I would rather partner up with a country that wants to be cooperative. Now, it doesn't always work out. Some of these countries are third world, and they don't know how to manage their affairs or manage their funds or manage their promises, perhaps the way that they originally signed up for. Maybe it's kind of like all of these people being given, checks to pay off their student loans, including the mayor of St. Paul, who makes $140,000 a year, just got the rest of his college tuition paid off. But you make a deal, honor it, and if you fall short of it, well, that's not China's fault. And when you talk about these spy satellites or whatever that they're going to do look, in 2022. All of these BRICS nations created a joint committee on space cooperation. It's like kind of like a NASA, if you will. And it reads, this committee plays a crucial role in enabling member space agencies to work closer together regarding environmental protection, disaster prevention, and mitigation and tackling climate change with efficient. That's what it is. Yeah, it's also military. Let's just call it what it is. But I think what I'm really getting at is that we're past the point of the U.S. being able to point fingers. And if anyone should have fingers pointed at them, it's the U.S. institutions. It's the government of the United States. And I hate to say it, but it's true. And, China doesn't have 750 military bases around the world. And if you listen to that Glenn Beck interview, it will truly blow your mind. Because the one thing that we see in all of these uprisings, starting with like with the Arab Spring, are these NGOs, non-government organizations that are financed, a lot of them by Congress. And you find them in all of these uprisings, including in Hungary and in the Arab Rising. They're now doing it in Palestine. This is something, or in Gaza, excuse me. And now there's proof that they're funding some of these college uprisings and had been planning it since November. So when you talk about conspiracies, when you talk about meddling, when you talk about meddling in others' affairs, I think that's the pot calling the kettle black. And while China is not perfect, I do believe that they are far more cooperative than we are. And when you can threaten people with sanctions and now confiscation of assets, it's really not cooperation as much as it is being cooperative with a gun to your head. So I guess that's just my 2 cents. And again, I'll say it again, I love this country. And I just think it's time for a change in the way that we do things. And, I wouldn't go around pointing fingers, quite to the contrary. It's this attitude that is making all of these countries join together and finding safety in numbers for sure. And I wonder if that even includes the supply chain lines. I mean, it's one thing to fund when you got aircraft carriers and airplanes and Humvees and tanks and all of these things that take fuel. But I wonder if that's taking into account the infrastructure or the supply chain infrastructure line, where all of these things have to come and be shipped to all of these bases. I don't know. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But that's really the point in all of this, is it's just hypocritical. And that's what I think the world is sick and tired of, is the hypocrisy of the West in pointing fingers, when you could argue that what we have done and what we continue to do covertly and out in the open is every bit as bad, if not in many cases worse. And I try and say that with an open mind and appreciative of all the men and women in service who make us safe and help us live the lives that we want. But the people pulling the strings up above are, in many cases, have lost their mind. And I think it's impossible for anyone to ignore that. And if you do, I think your head's in the sand. And in the last few weeks, I've talked with you 2 weeks ago about how you're seeing these exchange for physical deliveries that are these large deliveries of kilo gold bars in particular, that are being purchased in the West, delivered to Brinks, Hong Kong, which is a COMEX facility, and then being trucked over to the Shanghai Gold Exchange. We've talked a lot about how the vaults are being drained and the bankers showing up at the Shanghai Metals Exchange, and now those vaults are being drained, in particular in silver, because you can't export gold, and these things are undeniable. But I just want people to understand kind of simplistically what's happening. So the Chinese vaults are being drained due to the large demand exceeding supply in West. And I think these bullion banks are trapped. I know Alistair McLeod kind of alluded to that in your interview with him that I watched last night, that these banks are trapped. And so the Shanghai Gold Exchange and the Shanghai Futures Exchange sees the physical price of silver go higher, and at as much as $3 and $4 higher than the West. And because of this arbitrage that's sucking all the metal over there, right? And these traders don't have loyalty to this country in terms of the long-term ramifications. They're making a ton of money. So as this demand keeps flowing there and the price goes higher, you got the brain dead bullion banks and the COMEX and the LBMA that continue to slam down the price harder. And the spread between silver in the West and silver in China is at least 10 to 15% as a result of all of this, or higher. And so these Western vaults are being drained as the traders are monetizing the arbitrage. And so when you see silver in the vaults drop to their lowest since 2020 in Shanghai, that is a very ominous sign, because once those vaults are drained, we already know there's only roughly 300 million ounces of silver on the LBMA, if we believe what they're saying. So when we talk about the Shanghai vaults and their inventory in silver dropping to the lowest level since 2020, and a 10 to 15% arbitrage, if you will, for all the importers, you could very much argue that we are seeing Jeffrey Curry said, he said that the public can't squeeze the silver market because the public buys the ETFs, and the ETFs are the shorts. Talk about a faux pas, because when an ETF shorts metal, that's illegal. The ETF is not supposed to hedge anything. They are a custodian for people making speculations in the metals market. There would be no need to hedge. Talk about a faux pas. But in any case, when we see the vaults in Shanghai draining to their lowest level and really falling almost to the day that these bullion bankers showed up at the Shanghai Metals Exchange in March, and straight down since then because of the 300 million ounces, if we believe those numbers, at the LBMA, and roughly 60 million ounces in registered at the COMEX, with these deliveries continuing to happen over and over and over again, they're very close to running out of silver. I think they've lost control. They went to China and asked. And look, the normal settlement at the COMEX and the LBMA, which is they're called spot contracts, which are basically promises to deliver, are being replaced now with the scramble for physical delivery. And this is a bad thing. This is a very scary thing if you are a bullion bank who is short.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Let's quickly recap the key points from today's discussion. Andy Schectman highlighted the alarming situation where Western vaults are being drained due to a massive 10-15% arbitrage, with Shanghai's silver vaults at their lowest levels since 2020. This manipulation by bullion banks has created a desperate scramble for physical delivery, signaling a potential market crisis. If this continues, it could lead to a major shift in the silver market, impacting prices worldwide. Schectman warns that the bullion banks' efforts to manipulate the market are backfiring, creating significant risks for silver availability and prices. It's crucial to stay informed and protect your investments during these volatile times. If you found this information valuable, please hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments below,